Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Chris Berry, and I am going to be your host for today. Joining us, we have Diana Stepner. Diana, how are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you very much. Excited to speak to you today and to talk about coaching.
I like to talk about coaching too, and I love your answer. I feel that the little things can make such a big difference. I won't get on a tangent this early in the episode, but the answer of "I'm doing amazing," I think makes a big difference in many facets. So, before I get on tangents or start asking you in specific questions about your business, could you give everyone that is either listening or watching an understanding of what you coach people on?
Sure. So my background's in product management and product leadership. So I was a product leader for over 20 years. So I coach people who are product managers or product leaders and looking to upskill their expertise. Often folks are looking to get promoted, work better with stakeholders, be able to get into that, C-suite, whatever it may be that is next in their journey as a product person.
Very cool. I like it. And you kind of answered it to a certain degree because you said you had your experience in the background and all of that. What made you want to get started in coaching people on this?
Yeah, I realized over the years that I actually liked helping the people on my team more than I even liked launching products.
Hmm.
And so I use the tagline, I like launching people. Those are my products.
Mhm.
And it just came to a point in my career where the coaching, the mentoring, the guidance, just helping people get better was the things that really made our products shine. Because if
Mhm.
the team was stronger, if they felt more confident, if they were challenged in a good way, all of that made our product better. And so I started to unravel that, and I realized that my whole background's been around people. I started in communications and then went to customer relationship management and went to user experience research, and that led me into product. But it was all from a people-centric lens. And so essentially, I just continued down that path and got to the point where the people that were building the products to me were even more important than the products themselves. And folks kept reaching out to say, you were one of the best leaders I've ever had. You helped me in my journey. You cared about me. You motivated me. You pushed me. And I had a coach who did all those things for me. And so it made me realize this is what I really like to do. Why don't we give it a shot? And so last year I did the pivot and went to be a coach full time.
Cool. So it's been, as you said, about a year that you
Yeah.
made the pivot, you made this full time and everything.
Yeah.
What would you say over the past year have been some of the best and favorite parts of having your own coaching business? And then what have been some of the biggest challenges and difficulties of having your own
Yeah.
coaching business?
I mean, the best parts are always, when someone reaches out and said, I just got promoted, or, I ran that idea by my boss and they loved it, or, I got a raise, all of those exciting
Mhm.
milestones. When you know the stakeholders as well, and they reach out to you and they say, whatever you're doing is working because, the person is more effective or their executive presence is increased. Just all of those things are, things to celebrate. I mean,
Sure.
your work, your coaching is having an impact. So I love that. That's awesome and amazing. Also just coaches are really nice. And, I'm from Silicon Valley. There's a lot of competition. I would say sometimes more competition than collaboration.
Mhm.
And coaches are amazing. Everybody helps each other. Everyone's like, "Oh, I created this template. It worked really well. Here, I'm sharing it so you can use it." I mean, it's
Yeah.
just such an empowering community. And to me, that is just, yeah, helping my clients and being with a group of people who just all want to raise each other up. I just
Absolutely.
find that energizing.
Absolutely. For sure. And client wins. I mean, that's the whole reason why we get into coaching in the first place,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. So going through that in regards to the wins and then on the obviously collaborative community, everything like that. In regards to biggest challenges, what would you say some of those biggest ones that you faced over the past year?
Time, balancing time.
Mm,
Um, Last year, I was quite structured in that, I was getting certified as a coach. So I had all of my programs, my courses that I needed to go through. I had, the 100 people that I needed to coach. I had, other things that I wanted to do just to build up my brand. And all of that gave me a lot of structure. So
Mm,
I knew what I was doing and what I needed to accomplish. I was also working on a book, so I knew I needed to finish that.
yeah.
But then this year, January 1st, all of that was done. And
Mm,
so the hard part for me was figuring out what's success for me this year. What do I want to achieve? And so had a bit of a, oh my God, and then realized just take one day at a time. And so it's funny as a coach, I mean, we help people with these types of, situations. We have to remember to do that to ourselves.
yeah.
And so that was kind of my revelation, my surprise this year. I'm like, okay, apply what you say to yourself. And then that helped me chill out.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I laugh and smile when you say that because that's even some things I'll tell with my clients too. I'm like, look, I'm bad because sometimes I'll help in this and that in regards to growing the business. I'm like, yo, I gotta help get some of this stuff dialed because I'm spending so much time on this. So it's it's even something as coaches. I mean, I pay for coaching all the time for myself because I want to constantly do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's even just like smack the other coaches. Like I have one mentor. He's like, smack, like, dude, do the stuff that you're saying. Like, just do this. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. So
Yeah,
it's funny how that works sometimes.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But definitely went through that this year. And so have
Yeah.
my little note up this like, what is the one thing you want to achieve today? And
Mm,
what I focus on and just keep on going.
that is true. So you've been in it for a year, obviously transition, talked about client wins, you talked about kind of structure and everything like that. One of the biggest things that many coaches either will say is a challenge or especially in the early stages is a bit difficult is that aspect of getting leads, getting people interested in maybe working with their business with them. What are the ways that you're currently generating leads?
Yeah. And I think it's I don't know, I always wish I could roll back time because
Mm,
you listen to a podcast and you hear someone that's like, oh, I've been coaching, full time for 8 years or 10 years or something like that.
yeah.
And you wish you could roll back time because it'd be amazing to start, coaching then. Now it's very competitive. And so I think having that niche is really important. So for me, I focus on being where product people are.
Yeah.
And so that means, conferences, that means, being in Slack channels and communities. As I said, I wrote a book, so I have my book, um, and being on podcasts. But the thing is to be present and to be accessible. And so I write a newsletter about, people first product leadership. And all of that is my philosophy, which has coaching woven into it.
Mm,
And so it's those pieces that create the picture of me. And in all of those instances, I'm there to help people. And so
mm.
I weave in, coaching as an opportunity for people to get help or assistance that they may not be getting in other ways.
Absolutely. Well, the way at least it's presented to me and I've kind of explained it, one of your biggest and favorite parts about the business is client wins. And even as
Yeah,
you're discussing here in regards to generating leads, it's all about, you mentioned weaving coaching into it, but it's all about providing value first. How can I help you in that? And then naturally, the next progression up is, don't get me wrong, this one blog article I wrote, or this one post I made, or this one piece of
yeah,
advice I gave you is great, but like, are you actually going to do it? Or what?
yeah,
The next question, what are we going to do? Which obviously naturally leads into coaching. So,
yeah, yeah. And it's all circular, I believe in a sense, if you put out information that people find helpful, they're going to be curious about the person, and it kind of then creates that cycle.
yep,
But a lot of it also comes from, connections and following up with people. It's all of that, administration that we do, or those operational elements too, that, we have to put in the time and the effort to make the business run.
for sure. Absolutely. So let's say at this point you have some sort of post, a blog, something, and you now have a new lead.
Yep.
Now let's say that they're like, hey, Dan, I like what you're saying. It sounds good. Let's maybe have a conversation. What does that process now look like for you to take that person from a lead into an actual paying client, a sale in your
Yeah.
current business?
Yeah. And there are a couple different ways that I approach it because I think they're different types of clients. Some clients want structure. And so for them, I will give, quite, detailed information around, what I observed in our discovery call, what I think their, opportunities for growth could be, and then provide some resources there, to help them get started. And then weave that into, let's do another call to get that to get those observations out of your head and start building
Hmm.
up. Other folks don't want the detail. That's
Hmm.
not gonna that's too much. And so with those folks typically say something along the lines of, these are the one or two things that really stood out for me in our conversation. I based on my background, my history, etc. These are areas where I think I could partner with you. And then are you interested in continuing? So I think part of it is sussing out the type of person and their characteristics during that first call, and then being able to determine what would work best for them.
Hmm. So having a different approach based on each of the people you're speaking to, but it's primarily based around, let's understand where you are now. Let's make some sort of like game plan to kind of get you there. And then here's a solution, the game plan, but I'm going to help you implement it as kind of the processes of your sales as of right now.
Yeah, and I think maybe I'll step back. I mean, from the perspective of you start with a discovery call,
Mhm.
and sometimes, there may be a need for two discovery calls. You can, suss that out. That's best. After the discovery call, that's where the more specifics come in, whether the person, wants, give me everything you got. I want this brain dump. That type of, follow-up thank you is going to be more detailed than the
Mhm.
person who I just need to get started.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of a softer, more observational approach.
Mm.
And then from there, it's, based on their insight, it may lead to another discovery call, or it may be, yes, I'd like to proceed, it's something that they're interested in, and then following up with, an agreement, a contract to then continue.
Yeah.
And once that contract is signed, there are typically three parts that I cover. One
Mm.
is around like their communication, and I'm just generalizing, but from a product perspective, that communication is often an area that they, want to work on, whether it be, listening to people more, or, executive presence, or, clarifying expectations with stakeholders. That often comes to play. And so I'll put that under the bucket of communication. The second area is personal development. Often, we do strengths assessment. It may be, you know, some type of people will talk about positive psychology. So understanding what maybe your inner critics, what maybe your inner guide. So identifying those strengths, talking through the weaknesses, and then helping them build their confidence. You can do
Mhm.
this. And then the accountability is always a funky one. I mean, we're not supposed to be accountable as coaches. And so that is something that, being a partner, but also helping the client ensure that they have, people in their network who can hold them accountable for the milestones or for the progress. But I'll be very clear in the follow-up, here are some actions that, I recommend. And the hope is that, they'll do them. But I will say sometimes you got to lean in a bit more to hold people accountable. And that may be because they just don't have someone in their network like that. And that's
Yeah.
okay. But I realize that's not, what we're supposed to do. But sometimes you need to, draw outside the lines to help people.
Yeah. It's ultimately kind of, we're here because we want to get people results, and some people need a little bit of
Yeah.
as you mentioned, more accountability, more a little bit sterner. Like, look, we've had this conversation 4 times. What's going on? Like, this isn't okay. So,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
So going through, we talked about the sales process, talked about marketing before. When it comes to your actual program, it's primarily one-on-one working with people, going through these phases that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Uh, what are some of the biggest things that you do to go ahead and make sure that customers are happy, that they're getting success? We talked about accountability. I'm sure that's a big part of it. Are there
Yeah.
other things that really just stick out? Like, oh, I really make sure to do this when I start working with clients.
So There's two answers. One, I think it's just the foundation of coaching. It's listening. I think
Mm,
for a lot of people, they don't have an environment where they're listened to. And so a lot of folks want to feel listened to. They want to feel valued. They want to feel
mm,
heard. And so a lot of it is that letting people, talk, as we always do, using our open questions. But I find, it may sound quite basic, but it's really powerful. And to be able to drill in more, tell me more, you hunched up, what was that about? So really listening to people, I think is an undervalued skill, but it
absolutely.
does tremendous. And then a lot of folks like interactivity. And
Mm,
so I like Zoom whiteboards. And
mm,
so often we'll sketch things out. And it may be from a product perspective, but a lot of what we do is diagrams or flow charts or, just understanding how you need to move pieces around. So the Zoom whiteboards have worked really well
mhm,
because what the person is saying, you can write down. So again, they feel heard, but also it prompts in a visual as well as a vocal way. What do you want to do? What do you want to do next? What are some, thoughts or considerations that you may have about those steps that we've talked through? So I
mhm,
really think that that visualization is great. There's a lot of, templates and things like that we can use. With some of my clients, they'll do them, but oftentimes, people don't. They're busy. So sometimes we'll just go through, templates together to be able to suss out pieces. But I do find that the whiteboards really help because it's the interactivity, at least for the product people, that really helps them with design thinking or helps them more with that creative outlet and
mm.
really helps them get to some type of approach they can try.
Yeah, absolutely. I like those. So persons joined, implementing those things that you just mentioned, everything like that. Zooming back a little bit, because we've gone through the entire process of obviously what you coach people on, generating leads, selling, delivering, all of that.
Yeah.
The hardest part for most coaches, especially I'm sure you kind of face this in the early stages. Yes, you had knowledge of your niche in your industry, but most coaches, they're not business owners. They don't understand what do I need to do to run a
Yeah.
coaching business, everything like that. And so one thing that I'm really curious to go ahead and ask the coaches that come on the podcast is where do you go to go ahead and find information? I have a couple of like different like rattle off things that I can go ahead and mention to you, but just on a first glance, like where do you go to find information to learn like, okay, I need to do this or I need to do that, or is it just kind of like intuitive to you?
Yeah, and I'm by my nature, I am a information junkie.
Okay.
And so couple different answers. One is I'm in a community called Coaching Corner,
Okay.
and it's a great place, to ask those types of questions or to learn from other people. So definitely leverage the community. I also went through the College of Executive Coaching.
Okay.
And so I have, a cohort that I went through, the program with. So I
Okay.
reach out to them and connect with them. I also, whatever's free, I often sign up for.
Yeah.
And so a lot of coaching.com, free sessions are amazing.
Okay.
A lot of sessions, by David Drake and the Momentum Institute or, other programs they'll have offerings which are inexpensive. And that really helps me learn, helps me meet new people that I can then ask those questions of.
It's great.
And like you said, I have a coach. And
Mhm.
so I throw every question at her, help me with this, help me with that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to me, it's just, I love having lots of information to be able to filter through and find out what works for me.
Yeah.
And so I will try, to get information from lots of sources.
Yeah. That makes sense. So it sounds like most of it, you mentioned that community coaching corner. Where is that community held?
It's on Slack.
On Slack. Okay, got it. So coaching corner on Slack. You mentioned just other people like David Drake, Momentum Institute, coaching.com. That College of Executive Coaching, is that like a certification you went through or
Yep.
okay.
Yep. That
And
was
that's
my
like their
source.
website that you do or
So the the College of Executive Coaching is all the steps that you need to get certified. And
Mhm,
so I went through, starter, I went through the intermediate coaching, I did,
mhm,
niche marketing, I did all
mhm,
the recordings, all the mentor coaching, all of that.
mhm,
And so at the end of it, I had, all the appropriate hours and journaling and learning under my belt to be able to apply for the ACC, had the knowledge from that course to be able to study for the ACC and then pass the ACC.
mhm. Understood. Okay. That's awesome. As we begin to go ahead and wrap up, I do have two more questions for you, at least as of right
Yeah,
now, unless something else comes up.
yeah.
I'll keep myself. I have a tendency sometimes to get excited and ask more, but let's say two questions. The first one I wanted to go ahead and ask you is, knowing what you know now, it's been a year. I'm sure there's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of lessons, a lot of great, a lot of all of that stuff. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Diana that was just getting started in her coaching business? What's the one piece of advice you'd give?
I would give myself advice, but to be honest, I'm not sure I'd listen to it.
Okay, yeah. What's the advice there?
Um, to slow down.
Mm,
Um, Last year I put a lot of pressure on myself to meet, certain milestones. I'm
mm,
really glad I did it, but there's some times where I think I could have been more present.
mm,
Then I've got to do this because I need to get certified. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have gotten certified, but I think there's more reflection I could have gone through in my notes. There's more, yeah, just time to really sit back and say, okay, I went through this program. I have all this amazing material. Let's really digest it. And for me, I went through it and was like, okay, I've got to take the test. What are the key things that I need to pull out to pass the test? And I'm glad I did it. And, I want to go do my PCC, but I think I wish I would have taken some more time just to really absorb it for the sake of absorbing it, not
mm.
for the sake of a test.
Got it. Okay. So slowing down, giving yourself time to really ponder upon and reflect on the things that you were doing at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of notes that I took from my courses, from the programs I've listened to, and notes are great, but I
Mm.
really need to then circle back, look at the notes, and be able to, figure out what pieces I want to apply. And that's something that takes time, but I think it's valuable to do.
As coaches, we're so focused on, I want to learn, I want to do all that stuff. And then so it's like this thing and that thing. But let's be real, the most important thing is the application of the knowledge. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we get caught in this, even myself. I've been in this space for a bit of time and I have a bunch of different coaches, and I still like find myself like, hold on, like, Christopher, slow down, like, execute
Yeah.
upon this stuff. Like, I don't need more information. I just need to implement all this information that you've been
Yeah.
given thus far. So,
Yeah. And that again, like my 2025, part of it is to not sign up for every course. It's
yeah,
to be able to leverage the information I have.
yeah.
And, it may be imposter syndrome or something like that, but I can do more with what I have versus feel like I always have to, chase what's next.
Yeah, that is true. Last question I have for you as we
Okay.
begin to go ahead and wrap up this podcast interview episode, however we want to call it. For anybody who has really resonated with your message, they've enjoyed hearing about you, or even if you want to also talk about your book and everything like that, what is the best way for people to get in communication with you and get involved in your world?
Yeah. So I'm Diana Stepner. There are only three Diana Stepners on LinkedIn.
Mm,
And so you can find me quite easily and quickly on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a great way to find me and to follow me. I share quite frequently. And the other place is my website. So dianastepner.com. My newsletters are there. Information about my speaking is there. More insight into my philosophy is there. And then if you're a product person, yeah, the book is Next Gen Product Management, and you'll find it on Amazon. And I also link to it from my website, but those are really great ways to learn more about me.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Diana, it has been awesome hearing about your journey, your experience, everything you do inside your coaching business. It was great, obviously, discussing, and I look forward to chatting more soon.
Thank you. Wonderful to speak with you as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Absolutely. So, everyone, that is going to conclude this episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. I hope that you were able to get as much value as I did out of this specific episode with Diana. Two things that I would like to highlight that stood out for me. Number one, that quote she put, I don't know why it stuck with me so much. She said, it has coaching woven into it. And what she essentially was saying is, I'm just going to lead with value. You can even tell in their favorite part without even a snap hesitation, seeing client success, this or that. And so ultimately, I find that the coaches that lead with that, you can feel it inside of them. It's not like I'm just trying to sell you to take your money or whatever. It's like, no, like I'm really passionate about this. I know I'm really good, and I just want to help you do that. And that's something you can tell is very apparent about Diana. And then on top of that, I think it's so important to keep in mind as a coach. So that was the first thing that stood out to me. The second thing is about listening. And she is so true. And not actually a lot of coaches here, they kind of mention it, but not as direct and specific as Diana did. She talked about listening, how most people don't feel listened to, they don't feel heard, they don't feel valued. And so just by giving them that justice, by giving them the little bit of extra time, it makes such a big difference. And you'd be surprised because, and this is even what so many coaches come to me. They're like, oh, well, Chris, like, how am I different than this person, that person, all of that? Like, this person's so great. It's not even about some of even the steps. Absolutely, it's very important. But oftentimes, if you have a coach that just listens to you, that makes you feel valued, that makes you feel heard, it really sets you apart because most people, unfortunately, don't take the time to do that. And on top of that, too, when there's an individual, a client that is working with us as the coach, and they feel valued, they feel listened to, they feel heard, the odds that they actually in turn listen back to you, the advice you're giving, exponentially increases. And therefore, you get faster results for your clients. So, those are the two things that really stood out to me: leading with value first, and then number two, listening and giving that justice to your clients. If you did enjoy this episode, make sure to go ahead and drop a like. If you'd like to see more of it, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast.